All right, hi, welcome to the October 2nd, 2020 Club Cubase Google Hangout. I'm just going to do a quick audio test and make sure everything is okay on my end here. Bear with me just a second. And we'll get started in just a couple minutes after I do a quick test. All right, hi, welcome. Okay, sorry, I had a little couple minutes late. My OBS was deciding to act up, but got it all squared away. Apologize for being tardy to my own hangout, but my name is Greg Undo. I'll be hosting the hangout today. If you haven't been on a hangout before, how it works is you could submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de, or simply enter them in the chat field, and we'll try to get through as many questions as possible. I'm based in the United States, just outside of Washington, D.C. in Alexandria, Virginia. I work as a product specialist for Yamaha Corporation of America, and I focus primarily on Steinberg products. Like many of you, I have family at home during the pandemic, so I may be interrupted, or you may hear my son running on the floor above my office, or my wife on a conference call for her work. So I'll apologize for any interruptions. We'll try to keep those to a minimum, and we will go ahead, and if you're watching this live, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us who you are and where you're from. Also, if this is your first hangout, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us it's your first hangout, and make sure to ask questions. And as the questions are asked in the field, the questions will get asked before I actually have the ability to go through each of them. The questions may seem out of sync with the hangout. But I'll try to catch up, and we have some people that usually help. And as the hangout gets on, so I might be 30 minutes behind what the questions are, but we'll try to get through as many of the questions as possible, and we'll try to go for about 4 hours today. But if you are attending live, please feel free to introduce yourself. And if you're watching this on a replay, please feel free to kind of jump ahead a few minutes. We'll try to get started here in maybe about 3 minutes or so, but we'll let people get logged in, and let's see who's on the hangout. All right, so we see. Okay, you hear my wife maybe sneezing above me. All right. So I see Tim live. All right, so we see Orrin Bynum from Maryland. Good to see you. We have Robbie Bowling from Dallas. All right. We have Denmark, Germany. Okay, so see Jason Sykes. Good to see you on a hangout again. Okay, so we have Lucas. I believe Lucas is maybe from Portugal, if memory serves. We have Ace from Texas. Okay, good to see Ace. We have Matt from Fort Wayne, longtime attendee. Good to see you, Matt, on a hangout. Okay, so we have John Costigan from Kenosha. We have New Jersey. All right, so we have Vinny Sabatino from Orlando. All right, and occasionally my chat field will jump ahead of me, so like it just did. So we'll see who else is on a hangout. All right, so we have Capt Energy Music. All right. All right, so we have Amir from Iran. Good to see you on a hangout again. Okay. To see comment, OBS is great when it works. It's been surprisingly good. So it was working right before I went on, and right as I went to go live, it just kind of took a dump on me. But it seems to be back. All right, so we have P. Stevens from Houston, Texas. Good to see you on. My brother lives in Houston. All right, so we have Sub 403 from, I believe he's in Calgary, but sometimes in British Columbia. All right, so we have Netherlands. All right, so we have Millard from Pennsylvania. All right, so Ted from Sherman Oaks. All right, so we have Karen from the UK. All right, Agent K, who helps us out with some moderation when needed. Okay, so we have Jan from Stockholm. Okay, so we see Jesse Carmichael. Good to see you on the Hangout. All right, so we have Jazz Dude. We have Pablo. All right, so we have Teaneck, New Jersey, Berkshire, UK, Dusseldorf. Okay, so we have Eric from Maryland, not too far from me. Just about 2 miles across the river. Okay. Okay, we'll see how we're doing time-wise. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Sorry for late start here. Okay, so we see, hello, how to send each instrument to a different output bus for monitoring. So let me just jump to a different project to start this off. Sorry, I was just doing a big presentation until like 10 minutes right before, so you didn't get a chance to read all the questions in advance. All right, so let's say I assume maybe this is going to different output buses. So as we want to do this, we go to like your audio connections, and your audio connections, you could have different outputs. So if we want to have our different outputs, so let's say we have an audio interface with 4 stereo outs. All you have to do, like let's say we have or 8 mono outs, which we could configure as 4 stereo. So I will come here. So let's say we have 3. So we're going to have our 8 output buses or 4 stereo buses. And if I wanted to route, let's say if I have a number of audio tracks here, you could see it you could go directly here, say, okay, this is going out to, if we wanted to label them as well in our audio connection. So I'll go to my outputs tab and we can say 1, 2. So you just double click, let's say 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8. All right. So as we work with this, we could take any of our tracks here and then you could send it to whatever output you want. So if you wanted to send it, if you wanted to make it stereo outs or mono outs, and even if it's a mono track, you could choose to pan it all the way and send the output. Sorry, to just make this more clear. So we can say this is going to output 1 and 2. So let's say this is going to output 1, hard panned to the left. This is going to, outputs 3 and 4. So you could do it directly here. So say channel 4, we want it to go out of just a specific pan setting. So we'll come here, just grab that. And you could also do this in the full screen mix console when you go to the routing tab. So here you could pick and choose exactly what outputs that you want. So you can say, okay, these are going to 5 and 6, and these will go to, let's say, 7 and 8. So at that point, you could bus it to direct outputs in your mix console that will go out to your audio interface, and then probably into maybe a console or maybe a summing box, something, whatever it's going out to after that, or different speakers. Okay, so we have a question from Orrin Bynum. Hi, Greg. This is Orrin Bynum. I'm picking up a new iMac or a new MacBook Pro tomorrow. How can I get my old programs off my iMac and transfer them to the new one? What will I need to complete the process? If you set up a lot of different preferences and settings, Orrin, I would just come over here. First thing I would do is in your old Mac, go to your profile manager and save a profile. And this will, all of your settings and preferences will all be kind of carried over with that. So keyboard shortcuts, things that you've set up, save it as a profile, email it to yourself, or put it on like a little flash drive. And then you'll be able to, when you get your new computer, just simply take that. So when you have your project file, so like when I go to this, I try to have each, and I think we've discussed this before, but try to have each program or each project into its own unique folder. So when you kind of start here, you can say, okay, I'm doing a new project. And there's a choice for prompt for project location. So when I hit create empty, at that point, every single file that's going to be recorded, like I have a Hangouts folder. So when I create a project for Hangout, each project has its own unique folder. These could be copied to an external drive. You could hook it up via probably a network connection and copy the files over. But all of your song files will be there. When you go to install Cubase, you could use the Steinberg Download Assistant program. So let's say if I go to my Steinberg Download Assistant, and at this point, we could open this up. So, and this will be, you could download this, and this will kind of simplify the process of, I think you have some of the other plugins like Hallian, and then when you get your new computer, you just will need to move your e-licenser key, the USB e-licenser key. And you may have to get, if you're getting a new MacBook, you may want to get a USB-C to a USB-A hub to connect it because it has different USB connections. But here you could just say, I wanted to download the full version of Cubase and install it, download, install that. And for all of your different instruments, so you say, okay, now I just wanted to do Hallian as well. And the programs can be installed there. So the project files, you could manually move over. All of your internal program settings, transfer over via Profile Manager, and move the e-licenser key to the new computer and go to the Steinberg Download Manager to download all the programs. It's not too bad. It may seem intimidating at first, but it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so hi Greg, you're always great, thanks. When I record a MIDI part from Hallian's instrument loops, Cubase only records the fixed note. How do I get the complete MIDI part? So let me see if I have... let me see if I can find one that might have some of those sounds, maybe a guitar part. Bear with me just a second. Okay, so let's see if these have some of the... Okay, so here I could have... And these are basically just kind of triggering. I hit a single note, as you can see here on the keyboard. And this is going to be just triggering... so I'll go to my MIDI, or just... Sorry, let's go to Edit. And... when we come here, we go to MIDI, and we could see kind of what we call a flex phraser. And this is what's actually kind of generating. This is just a single sample. I turn on the flex phraser. I get kind of that pattern. So really all you have to do is just click on the record button. And then as you hit a note, And then you'll see this little MIDI icon. Drag that over, and then you could just have that now play back that particular. I'll just solo this. So that you may want to try just, going to edit and then under the MIDI and then under the flex phraser section, hit you'll see just this little record button directly below that. Hit that, and then that will place it into almost like a little memory buffer that will go here, and then you could just drag that directly to a track. So give that a try. But if it's a particular instrument that's set up differently, let me know. But that's probably going to be how, if they're kind of playing different loops like that. Okay. Okay, so we see from Ace, hi Greg, hope you and your family are safe and doing well. Please show me on Cubase 10.5 how to create effects groups so I don't have to place effects on every single individual track. For example, I have 4 reverbs, but want to use different effects, delay, panning on my pianos and pads. Thanks. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. Say, I'll come over here and let's see if this is. Okay, just find a quick file here. So I'll just do it with some drums here. Okay, so let's say I have my drums are dry. And I wanted to add a reverb, like one reverb that we could use across all of the drums so they all sound like they're in the same room. So I'm going to select all of these tracks here, and we can do it in the mix console as well. And I'm just going to right click and we'll add effects channel to selected channels. And I'll just add a Revelation reverb, and we're going to just do this. So now we've created an effects return channel. So this is the amount of the effect that we could make louder or softer into the effect. And we want to send signal from these channels into this one. And when we use a send as opposed to dedicated reverbs on different tracks, we can vary the amount of how much is going directly into that reverb. So I'm going to go to my sends here, and I'll just make this a bit more obvious overall for my levels here. I'll just do too much reverb. So I'll just make all my drums just a little louder. So if I solo my kick, so this kick is now going over to this particular track, to my reverb. So, and how it does that is via a send. So now that's going to be dry, and then I could blend in more of the kick sound. So we have more of the sound going into the effects end, or I could have it more dry. So let's say if I now want to just sneak over to, one of my other tracks, I could do say, okay, I wanted to go to my snare, and we'll just have our top snare. So again, this snare and the kick are going, I have more reverb on the snare. And if you wanted to come over here to the panning, I could say I want the reverb for the snare to only be in the right speaker or only in the left speaker. So we could pan the reverb independently on each track as well. So if I jump up to our to our kick drum again, so let's say I select a kick and go to just descend level at this point. And that's really kind of how you could do that. So instead of having a dedicated reverb on each one, you could have independent panning and independent levels. And something else that's handy to do a lot of times with, especially doing like kicks and kind of low end information, you could, so say as we're playing it, you could go to like the effects return channel here. And if you wanted to just apply EQ, so you could kind of shape the tone of the EQ in the effects return channel if you want. It's kind of the old school way of making a cheap reverb sound good. Add more kind of high end to it. So that's how you could kind of get to, set up your different send effects for your effects ace. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Okay, so we see, hi Greg from New Jersey. Is there a way to edit two recordings if the same event that have different internal clocks? So maybe, I know it's kind of early in the Hangout, so we could probably get it, but it's from Dr. Patricio Molina. Hope I pronounced your name correctly. But when you mean two different internal clocks, is that in like different speeds, or if there are different time signatures? Maybe if you could specify that, we could get back to the question. Or I don't know if it's like a internal clock for like, internal, external audio clock, or different sample rates, or different time signatures, or kind of different tempos. So if you could specify that, that would be helpful. And hopefully you could just reiterate the question. We'll catch up to it a little bit. Okay, question, is there a way to import audio from MP4 and .mov files? So once we come over here, I'll just activate this. So you'll see just import audio from video file. But when you import a video file itself, so let's say if I have a video file, I could just double click here. And as the video file is imported, it's automatically extracted the audio directly below. So that's something that you could do. But if you just go to your file menu to import, you could import the video file, have the audio extracted automatically, or just the audio from the video file. All right, so we see Carlos from Colombia. Good to have you on a Hangout again. All right, good to see Ted from Sherman Oaks. All right. All right, so a question from Jesse Carmichael, who will be our celebrity attendee today, one of them. So, hey, Greg, hope you're well. Any word? I'm doing great. Thanks. Hope you and your family are well. I think you had a recent addition to your family, so hope that all went great, and congratulations. Any word on the multi-tool, like in Pro Tools, for easier audio editing right in the arrangement window, waveforms without having to switch tools? All right, so let's say if I wanted to... We'll just take a look at, like, I'll make this a little larger. So All right. So when you come over here, you could actually just activate, and this came in 10.5, a multi-tool. So where we could combine the object selection and the range tool, where they were kind of two separate tools that you could switch by hitting one on your QWERTY computer keyboard, 2, 3. So if you click just to the left of that, this will allow you to kind of take a range and be able to say, okay, I just want to delete that, or I wanted to take a selection here. I wanted to do a volume. If you hold down the Alt or Option key, you could split and come right over here, do this volume. I want to be able to adjust, the amplitude of different sections as well. So if I come here, let's say I select that, we can now just, again, just kind of, take our different parts, move them around, do all this if I wanted to resize. So a lot of that, different functions that were there. So if I wanted to split or just hit Alt, X to get rid of it, or let's say come right over here, Alt plus Shift X, I could, just delete that particular space. So, with kind of the two different tools, so just with the combine tool, you could, select a range and move that without having to split. You could, do fades directly here. You could also just adjust your size. And if you go to hold down Command Option or Alt Control, you could slip within the event, adjust volume, and be able to move stuff pretty easily. So in 10.5, just, you can get a lot of added functionality plus Alt and split for, sorry, I just got a new keyboard last week, so getting all my modifiers down. So, so it's pretty easy to do a lot of stuff with a single tool. All right, so we see Pablo Vasquez in. It's great to see you. All right, from Galicia, Spain. All right. So I see a question from Robbie in Dallas. How do you feel about all the software apps using AI technology? Sometimes AI, it's great when it solves your problem. But, there's a lot of stuff that kind of goes in and, there's probably not a actual definition of what AI is or artificial intelligence. There's a lot of, programming that has to go in, but I think like Dorico is a great example of a program that just kind of makes, I would say like as you're entering a notation that it does a zillion things to make sure that the results are musical. All the time, but there's, lots of different things, but, whether it's just kind of smart programming or actual artificial intelligence, I'm not sure, if, where the line is between those two, but, anything that solves your problem and gets you to the end line of where you want to be, if it gets you there faster, I think it's great. So I'm not sure if I have any ethical concerns about it, Okay. So, hello, Greg, Long Island, New York. Hobbyist routing different instruments to separate monitors. So let me so it's very similar to what we had before. So when I come here, we could have, all of your folders here. So if we wanted your instruments to be routed to different monitors, we could have those defined in your audio connections. If you have the control room here, you could say, you could actually kind of have entire monitors set up here. So if you say, okay, I have HS7s from Yamaha, I have Genelec, I have JBL, and let's say, KRK, whatever speakers that you have. So you could just see your different monitors. So you could route each track to different monitors, by just choosing your outputs here. Or if you wanted to take the entire mix and send it to different monitors, if you have Cubase Pro, you have something called the control room. And at this point, you can just, see your different monitors that you're able to kind of just switch between different monitors directly here. So you could do it kind of either way. All right, so we see CD Music Creations from Florida. All right, and we have Poland also checking in. All right, so we have Mozambique, France. Okay. All right, so we have Mayenzi. Sorry if I pronounced that incorrect, but from Chicago suburbs. Spent a lot of time in Chicago over the years when I used to do more rapping. Lots of friends there. Okay, so we have Rob from Canada. We have Newport, Rhode Island, Marvin. Glenn again from Virginia Beach. Great to see you, Glenn. Okay, my chat field just jumped way ahead. Bear with me just a second. Okay, so we have a question. Hello, sir. Please explain about backup files. I have settled in preference in autosave after 5 minutes, but which I see there's a song there are many song files set up, created there. How to solve this problem, please explain. So when you go to your preferences in Cubase and you go to general, there's a backup. So you can have kind of an autosave function. And this could do, you can set this for down to 30 seconds or, every 10 minutes, I think is default. And it will just do an auto save in the background for you. So when doing this, it's going to save a number of backups. So when you do a backup, I think it's going to store maybe 10 or 12 different backup files. So that way, if you've been working actively for an hour, or let's say, if you've been working actively for an hour, you'll have, and your backup, your autosave interval is set to 5 minutes. It will create backups it should create about 11 or 12 backups. And they'll all kind of go into the same root level folder as where your project is. So as you do, and then if you go another hour, those 11 or 12 backups are replaced by the latest, every 5 minutes of backups. So that way you could go back if you need to and say, everything I did the last 30 minutes was horrible. You could go to the back, and it'll be labeled as the .back file. And then it will just, you could go back within multiple levels. So you'll have multiple backup files. So when you do a backup, it's not just a single file, but it will just create multiple back files so that you could have different stages of your backup. All right, so we have Brian checking in from Las Vegas, was on a few weeks ago, and he told me about Cubase Elements, purchased it, and been really enjoying the product. Made 2 songs. Finished this one last night. That's great. Thanks for letting us know. And if you have questions, Brian, it's wonderful. Thanks for sharing, and we're glad to see you on the Hangout again. Okay. So I see, hi Greg, question in editor window with independent track loop on. It loops fine, but as soon as I click to mix console or come out of editor window, it stops looping. I think that's kind of how it works. I think it's the independent track loop editor. If you're not familiar with it, is more just kind of like, I use it personally more for kind of like a quick sketch. So I'll just revert this quickly. So I think what some people will do is actually just do, so let's see if this part makes any sense. Okay, so let's say at this point, I haven't done this in forever, but let me just, so we'll activate the independent track loop icon. So okay, so let's say if I just want to, so I think what some people do is we'll have, and let me just see if I had to, okay, so let's say I'll just activate the independent track loop here. So you can see that the song is continuing to play. So I know what some people end up doing, and it's a little goofy, I realize, is just to kind of, we'll say, minimize that window. And now I could go to the mix console and I could still do stuff, and that track loop for that part is still playing while it's going on and while I have other windows active. So try just taking the editor window and, just minimize it. And then you should still have the independent track loop functioning. I know it may not be the most ideal situation, but, that'll work for you. Okay, so we have Stefan from Sweden. All right, so we have someone from Kazakhstan. That's great. All right, question from Ted Springman. Can you demonstrate how to break a wine glass bowing your double bass? I haven't tried that yet, but maybe the next Hangout, Ted. So I think he's asking in jest. So question from Robbo, can I set in preference a standard color for MIDI notes? So there's different coloring schemes for MIDI notes. So when you go into the editor themselves, you could have it. So let's say if you go to setup, you could, have different preferences, presets. So I think, you could do it by pitch, channel, part. You could match it to the grid, by sound slot, by voice. So as you kind of, if you wanted to look at this by, the color of the track, I could just say, okay, let's look at the color of the part, and those MIDI notes will turn green if I have different velocity values here. So let's say you could colorize by velocity. So as I wanted to come here, so you could see that the lower velocity notes are blue, and as they get higher, they're red. So, you could have kind of all these different choices. You could do it, by voice, where if you want the notes to be kind of, white, or if you now wanted to go to your setup for, different voices, you could, go in and change colors as you see fit. So there's a lot of different options, and it's not necessarily, it's going to be, I think this setting will stick until you change it in another key editor. So try those different coloring options, and I think that will probably get you where you want to be. Okay, so we see, hey Undo, any suggestions why I can't use my scroll wheel on my mouse to change quantize values no more? I used to be able to scroll through the list, but not anymore. So let's take a look. let's say if I'm, so it doesn't look like the scroll wheel is functioning to change that. I don't remember it doing it, but I may not have selected it that way. But a lot of these, we often kind of get complaints sometimes when people are moving their mouse over different stuff that it could change inadvertently, unexpectedly. So it may be one of those things that's kind of deliberate, but I could pass that on to our team and see if that was something that was taken away. But a lot of times we have user complaints as people are moving the mouse that it could change values inadvertently. But let's say if I'm in like my quantize setup here, if you're in a quantize setup and where you're kind of specifically going there, you go to the grid, you could change the values there, but not there. So you could just open up the quantize setup if you really need to do that, and you could assign a keyboard shortcut for that. Seeing more discussion on how to bow your upright bass with a wine bottle. Nice comment, Millard. All right. Okay, so question: when I import an audio track that has been converted from MIDI instrument track, the parts are out of position. Is there a way to solve this? So when you convert, so when you do this, so let's say if I have an audio event here. So I had a MIDI event and I do a render in place. I'll go to my render settings and say, okay, let's just do our channel settings. And then, so that's going to play back kind of perfectly in time, sample accurately. So if I just play both of them, and I had that set to mute it. So I'll choose to unmute, and we can play both of the events together. So if something sometimes is out of time, I would check that if you did an export audio mixdown, and like you just selected like that one, like soloed it or selected that one file, I would check to see if it's out of time. I would check to see if there's a sample rate mismatch. So make sure that it's the audio file is the same sample rate as what you see in the project setup. So if you go to project menu to project setup, you could now come over here and see all of the, you can see your sample rate for the project. So make sure that you exported the file as the same sample rate as what you're doing. If not, it could cause that to be out of time. All right, so we see Gareth on a Hangout. It's going to be popping in and out. Good to see you, Gareth. Okay, hi, Greg. Last time you explained how to extend range in MIDI. That was correct, but it didn't work with example. The trumpet combi is limited in range. I can extend that with, can I extend that with mapping in Halion 6? So I think this might be with, so I think last time, for the benefit of people that who weren't on, I think it was maybe the last Hangout, when you wanted to come over here, you could go for each of the instruments. Say I'll just load one up. And we could set kind of the range that the instrument will play through. So we come here. You could just say, okay, we want it this particular range for that instrument. But if the instrument samples aren't there, that may not extend it automatically. So let's take a look for inside of Halion 6 quickly for that particular preset that was labeled. So it's going to be trumpet combi. So I'll just do a quick search. If I could only type. Okay, so let's see if this is the particular preset. So I will just all right, and if you wanted to get one note higher. Okay, so let's see if we could come over here and go to, and within Hallian, I'll put this in the center so as not to be so annoying. And then go to mapping. So let's zoom in. So I'm just going to hit G and H here. So we see it's ending on a D as the high note. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll this over. And sometimes you could just take like all these samples and just kind of drag it over. So now so again, how we could do that, I'll just undo this. I'm just going to take those samples and sorry, maybe just so just to show that again, just take the edge, select like the last note, and then you could just drag this over. And that will take that one sample and continue to map it across for you. And you could do that inside of. So as that was the highest note. So you could do that inside of Hallian. So give that a shot. And I think you could get more range out of a particular instrument that was sampled to the natural range of the instrument when necessary. And I don't think you're able to do that in Hallian Sonic or Hallian Sonic SE, but the full Hallian, you could do that. Okay, so we have a question. Is there any way to take advantage of old Cubase files into new Cubase 10.5? Let's say Cubase SL3 files with MIDI tracks and audio tracks, for example. The Cubase SL3, anything from Cubase SX, which was 2001 when it was released, so, more than 19 years ago at this point, those will just import. You could just open those files. If you had, and that those are .cpr file extensions, like for Cubase project, and if you have previous versions like Cubase VST32 version 5, that use a different file format for the Cubase song structure, and that was a .all or .arr files, and those you would, to get those into 10.5, you would need to just, import it into SL or SX3, save it and export it. You could import a .all, .arr file and then save it as a CPR file. But the file formats are the same. You may open up a project and it may be referencing a bunch of plugins that don't exist, but the MIDI data will open up and the audio data will open up, the EQs will open, the automation will work. So, but you don't really have to do anything special from, as long as it's like an SX1 and higher. Okay. Okay, so a question from Gareth K. Music. Any way to automatically transfer the automation when using render in place? So let's say I will just come over here. I'll just drag over a drum file, and Let's just do a big fade out here. So now we have that as automation, and we look in our, and I'll just take my loop off. Sorry about that. So I just see like this file getting softer over time. We still have our independent track loop, but so let's just do a quick render in place. I'm not sure if that is carried over. We'll test it. So I'll just do complete audio signal path. And so as we do that, it looks like the volume automation was automatically included in the render in place. So when we play back that file, we can just, and we'll see visually that it's getting quieter as we hear it getting quieter. So if we double click to launch a sample editor, you can just get a sense of the volume changes there that's applied in the render. So looks like that's automatically taken into account. So it looks like the automation is just done. So just give it a shot. So I just see a question from Jan. Correlation today, rap song and pop. I experienced that over time. The negative correlation has increased. Does Greg know which direction the trend is and what is reasonable limit on negative correlation? I'm the least trend following person. I'm kind of, my trends I follow now are more Legos for my son. So I may not be the best person to ask Jan with that. But if you give me some examples, I might be able to listen to it and give you a sense if you want to send me a message. All right. So we're seeing some discussion in Spanish. Okay, so I see from Vincenzo, thanks, Greg, but I meant for the same thing, but from the Halion MIDI player module, not the Flex Phraser. So let's just take a look, see if I can find this quickly. And if there's a particular preset, let me know as well. All right, so I'll just randomly pull up sound and okay. Okay, make sure I have the right one here. Okay, so it looks kind of like these. So sorry if this is like the worst possible sound you could have for this, but it looks like the same concept. That maybe you could just drag. So let's see if once you have that, so looks like we could just take that and drag it right over the same way. So same principle from the MIDI player module. Sorry if I misunderstood about the flex razor earlier, but it looks like the same concept. But let me know if I misunderstood. Again, sorry about that. Okay, so we see Dan White ESP checking in from Barcelona. Thanks for joining us on a Hangout today. Okay, so it says, "Hi Greg. Last time I asked a question about how to delete a track with empty audio event. What I meant by empty audio event is track with silenced audio event. So if you so I'm not sure if you want to delete the silences." So I'm just reading it again. Sorry. So if you wanted to delete, let's say if you have a recording and there's, I think I might have some in, jump back to the Amos Moses project here. All right. So if we wanted to like get rid of the silences, so I'm not sure if you want to get rid of the space between the silence, but if we, to do this, you could go to under processes. Or go to advanced, maybe to detect silence. And you could kind of set a threshold here. And what you could actually do is, so anything that's kind of below this particular threshold, and if you wanted to get rid of it, you could choose to, process, and that would get rid of all of the empty space. So if that's what you want to do, you could kind of set the threshold and release. So, and again, that's going to be under audio advanced to detect silence, and you could play around with, sometimes, the minimum time open, you could play around with some of these settings as well to adjust. I had a good friend of mine who, instead of giving a quick call, just post on Facebook that the detect silence wasn't working and he had it set like really high. But try if you wanted to get rid of those parts, but if I'm misunderstanding again, just let me know. So that way you could get rid of the empty parts and keep the rest of the project. Okay, so see question, apply note expressions to MIDI notes. So I think I might have this for a live stream I did with Sam Ash this week. Let me see if I have this file still. Here, I'll just redo it on our one. I had a good demo of this. Let me just... Oh, anyway, so I'll recreate it here. I think I just use like a retrolog patch for this. Let's just find a pad. Okay, so let's say if I wanted to come here and so if we want to do note expression, so let's say I've recorded my lovely composition there. You have to give Gareth material in every Hangout. So now if I wanted to do note expression, and we could do this kind of on a single note. So if I wanted to take, this note here and just do tuning, all you had to do is just double click on a particular note, and you could just grab like the pencil tool and you could actually just and let's say I wanted this note to do panning. So we could just select pan up here, and I could just kind of have this note pan. Independently there. So now as we listen to this, if you want to see the note expression data, you could just kind of, if you don't want to see it, you could click here and you can see the line. So now we'll have the upper note pan and the lower note just change pitch. And then you could also say, I just wanted to adjust the cutoff for this particular instrument. And let's say the resonance as well. So while that's all playing. And that's going to require like a VST 3.5 instrument, which can be like Halion Sonic, Halion Sonic SE, Pad Shop, or Retrolog, to allow you to have that independent control over MIDI controllers. And that's how you could apply note expression to MIDI notes. Okay, so hi Greg, is there a key command or project logical editor command to delete all track ends that are outside of the left and right locators? So I think we could split. Let's see if we can make something here. All right, wrong project again. All right, so I have all these files, and I wanted to perhaps do a split based on left and right locators. So I'll revert this quickly. Okay, so let's say I want my right locator to be here. And let's take a look at the Project Logical Editor. Okay, so let's say we want to delete, say container type parts. And say position. Okay, so let's see if we can, so we have inside cycle. All right, let's just see what outside of range is. So let's say I go to 2, and then if I did just a split, so let's say if I'm in this, here, let me set my locators up again. Okay, so I go to 2. And let's say split. Okay, here's something that you might be able to do. Let's just take a look. So if I have everything selected, so let's say I do a Command A or Control A, and then from Edit, seeing if the cut head, cut tail. If that's just for an individual part. Okay, so I'm just gonna okay, so I have events beyond there. Let's set my left and right locators. I'm going to disable a quick preference under editing for my range. For the cycle files range. It's kind of fighting against me in this case. Okay, so I want And I'll just... So let's say if I do this to 70, measure 75, and see what happens. All right, so if I move my cursor, let's say to, and I could work with this a little more offline so we get some more questions in. But I think I could probably finagle it. But let's say if I come here and let's say my cursor's there, so I do just a global split. Okay, so let's see if we get this. So let's say I have some additional parts kind of scattered around. Okay, so I'm here. I'm going to say, let's do a split. Go to select all, say from cursor to end. And then delete. All right, so let's make that into a macro. So we'll come here to our key commands, and we'll say delete beyond cursor will be the name of our macro. Okay, so I'm going to add that. All right, so I'm going to remove these two that I put in accidentally. Okay, so we're going to choose select events from cursor to end. Add, and now we just want to put in like a backspace or delete. Okay, so let's go here and add this function. All right, so I'm here. Let's run the macro and see. Okay, so if these are all kind of the same, let me just glue these together. So let's say if I'm here and run the macro, so let's say delete beyond cursor. So that's what you could do. And if you wanted to navigate to the end of the locator first, so let's say I hit 2, and then we say delete beyond cursor, boom. So that's what you could do. Is I'll just update the macro here. So I'll go to my key commands, and for our delete beyond cursor, I'm going to just hit 2 here. Add that, and now I'm going to move up. So now if I have my range tool, and I want it to cut based on the range here, so that's where my right locator is. I want everything to be deleted after that. I'll come here and delete beyond cursor. You could do it just kind of like that. So hopefully that helps. Sorry, it took a while to get there, but and you could play around with that. So the macro, I'll open it up so you could look at it while I read the next question. So just see a question. Hi, Greg. I already experienced a lot of video export from Cubase and the format becomes bluish. How do I get rid of this? I may have missed out a clue. A lot of times it could depend upon what the codec was coming in. So make sure that it's going to be, if you do video file formats for Cubase and Nuendo, check there and make sure that it's going to be like one of the supported codecs that's kind of set up for that. But if you wanted to email me a video file of kind of before and after, I'd be happy to kind of pass it along as well. I did get an email from someone else that had a similar question, a friend of mine from Texas. So, okay, so a question that came from Cubase Elements, and I recently switched to Pro 10.5. Congratulations. I don't know how to select different parts of audio of different takes and make one of the best parts. Can you help me, please? Yeah, so we could do this kind of with the comping tool, and this will be perhaps a little different in the Pro version. So let me see if I have my comping. So if you wanted to create just kind of like a composite part or where you have multiple takes and you wanted to, just turn those into particular files, once we have all of the recordings done, let's say in this track, you'll have this little icon that's for show lanes. So if you click here, this will be all of your different passes. So let's say, and if I just grabbed the little hand tool, I could come over here, I could select a different take. So if I wanted to come up with the best parts of each of these, I could split each phrase and just kind of select and say, okay, these are different takes. You could say, okay, this is now our perfect recording. And if you hold down the command or control key, you could listen to each pass directly there. And then when you close the lanes, they're all going to be just kind of is your comp part that's automatically assembled for you of all of your different passes. So just make sure that you have the lanes. I'm not sure if Cubase Elements may not have had, I'm not sure if that has the lanes, but that would definitely help you out with that situation. All right. And we'll just if you have had a question or if you've learned something new, make sure that you hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And this way we could actually, we can know exactly when Hangouts are coming. So make sure you do that. Okay, hey Greg, what does the UV22HR mastering tool do, and should I use it? Thanks. So the UV22, kind of the intention is, and it's often kind of run on like a master fader, generally post insert, and it's a dithering plugin. So the UV22 is kind of in the day, kind of a renowned dithering algorithm designed by Apogee. And what dithering does is if you record at a higher resolution audio file, such as a 24-bit, 48K, or 2496, and then you export, let's say for CD at 16-bit 44.1. Eventually you're losing a lot of data just in translating down when you go from different bit depths or higher bit depths and sample rates to lower bit depths and sample rates. So what the UV22 is designed to do is in the background, what it does is it kind of adds noise to mitigate the degradation. So it will allow you to kind of maintain the original sonic integrity of the audio when you go from a higher resolution to a lower resolution. So, if you're working everything at 2496 and you export it as a 3296, you may not need to do the apogee, you may not need to do dithering, but if you're going to a lower resolution, it's always always a good idea to use the dithering plugin to do that. Okay, so a question, is there a way to place something closer to the line, example, beat 8, as opposed to zoom all the way in and place it, example, loops, notes, etc.? So let me just jump back to another project here. Thanks for all the wonderful questions from everyone. All right, so I'll just revert this to my jumping off point. Okay, so a lot of times when we're kind of snapping to the grid, a lot of times you may just, so let's say if I have this event here, we could choose to snap to the grid and we could use different values for our grid. So if I have it snap to bar, so let's say from here to here is a bar, I'm only going to be allowed to snap it in intervals of a bar. If I choose for this to be snapped to a beat as opposed to a bar, what I could do now is as I go to move it, it's going to only allow me to place it on the beat. And this could depend on what your master time is. So if here I'm in seconds instead of bars and beats, I could, move it to 1 millisecond, 10 milliseconds, a tenth of a second or a second. If I'm in SMPTE time code for my frames, at this point I could just say, so when I go to time code, I can see different frame rates laid out for you directly there. So as you move, now it's only going to snap to the beat, and there is kind of different nudge commands. So if you wanted to, move it to the left or right, and I think that's just going to be, if you hold down Command or Control plus the left or right arrow, you could move it with keyboard shortcuts. So that's a good one to know. So select the event, and then you could kind of move it. And this is all if you have the snap enabled. So if I have snap turned off, you can freely place an event or note anywhere you want. Once snap is turned on, now it's going to snap directly to the grid like so. And if I change the grid to, directly to bars, I only move it in intervals of 4 beats. I could also say I want it to move it, to different rhythmic values. So if I say, okay, I want this to be set to, let's say 8th note triplets. So now I could move the events or notes in that particular time frame. So this kind of works the same way for notes in an event as well. So if I have some notes here, I could select these particular notes and nudge them kind of with the same exact quantized values here. So I can say, okay, let's just nudge this to 8th notes, to whole notes, etc. So you could just change kind of the resolution here to quarter note, and that will allow you to move it to beat 8 or whatever you want. So hopefully it makes sense. If not, just let me know. Okay, so a question from Jay from Connecticut. Is there a way to lock workspaces from moving around, especially when one monitor is turned off and the OS wants to move windows to visible areas? If so, please request. So let's take a look at the workspaces and see. I don't have two monitors set up currently. I will just, let's say I want to add a workspace. So I'm not sure if there's a way to lock it if the monitor resolution is changed. So let's say if I jump here, I could also I'll definitely pass it on to the team. But sometimes workspaces might be assume that you have kind of the similar configurations. So it might be ideal to have the same monitor configurations, but I could pass that along, Jay. Okay. So also, how do I open default EQ on a track in a separate window? Okay. So, So when you open up the channel settings, you could see kind of the default EQ here. But I don't know a way to, if you wanted to only see the EQ, you could probably go to the settings and, just let's say, if you go to setup, you could say, I want to hide everything except the EQ window if you wanted to. So if you select different components, you could say channel name, edit instrument. So let's see what happens if I just do this. So, but it's, I'm not sure if there's a way just to have the EQ by itself open. In that way, it's going to open up the full channel strip. Okay, so how to open default EQ on track to a separate window. So, just clicking the E button will open up the EQ like that you could do. So I'm not sure if that's what you want to see. So let me know if I'm misunderstanding. Okay, my chat field jumped on me. Bear with me just for a moment. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. Okay. So I see, hi Greg, there's a way to print sheet music from score editor. Is there a way to import sheet music? If so, what would the format be? So, a lot of people, two common formats for importing sheet music would be just kind of MIDI data. So a lot of people will take standard MIDI files to get MIDI information over, but that won't necessarily correlate to all of the, if something has been set up in a notation view, But what you can do is if you get a file to import, a common format for this, if you need to take it in and out of different programs, is just to import a music XML file. So this is how people using different notation applications, like, people are migrating from Sibelius and Finale to Dorico, which is, so many people doing that you could actually just take all of your files in those other programs and export them as a music XML. So music XML files are a pretty standard format for taking sheet music and being able to go back and forth. Sometimes if you're just, instead of buying a piece of music like we used to in the old days, you could buy a PDF of it. So Cubase won't really allow you to manipulate that or open that. But if it's kind of like an editable document, a lot of times you'll also see a music XML file. So look for that format. Hi, Greg. Is there any app for Android to control Cubase 10.5 in my desktop computer with a tablet? So I think, I'm not sure. I don't use my Android tablet for that. But I think you could probably get like Touch OSC. I think might be available for Android. I'm sure someone else could weigh in. And but I think there's a number of different control apps. But I think Touch OSC. I could do just a quick look here. Bear with me just a second. Yeah, so it looks like Touch OC is available. I think if you go to the Amazon App Store, there might be kind of an older version of Cubase IC Pro, but it may not be working with later Android versions. But I think it might still be on the Amazon App Store, so something to check there as well. Okay, my chat field jumped on me. Bear with me while I get my place. Thanks for all the great questions. Hi, Greg. Can you route an effects channel to another track instead of the stereo out? You can route it, I believe, to a group channel. So let's say if we add an effects track to this. So I'm going to add an effects channel to, so add an effects channel to the selected channel. So let's say we add a reverb. So when I play this particular file, we're going to hear, get my computer keyboard set to the right computer. All right. So I could do that. And now we have this feeding this. And I believe that I could take this and add a group channel to the selected track. So now we could, so see this. We just look at this, make sure. So this is going to the Revelation, and so you see this, and let's check the group. So when we look at this, it's going to be routed. So it looks like that's the stereo out. And I ran into a situation with this with like Peter Frampton, who wanted to record the output of a plugin. So I think the effects channel is going to be kind of sent to the stereo out. But if we add, let's say I take this particular, all right. So, but let me see if I can send this to this reverb to a group, maybe via send. So it doesn't allow you to do that. But if we send this to, so I'll remove this. But coming here to, if we send it to a group channel, so what Peter wanted to do was to record the output of the effect in real time. So right now I'm going to send this track is being sent out to this group. And let's say on this group, I wanted to have as an insert a reverb. And so I'll make it sound somewhat believable here. And he wanted to then record the output of just the effect. So we created an audio track, and since it's on a group track, at this point, I'm going to set its input from, let's say, group 2, which is so we're sending the sound to the group, which has the effect on it, and now we're going to take the input from group 2, and I'm just going to place this into record. So as we do this, and once you have that group could be routed to other subsequent groups. So I'll listen to this particular track, and that's just the reverb that's been sent out directly to there. And if I add another group channel, I could send the group to groups kind of further down the line. So I could take this particular group and in its output choose to say, okay, instead of going to the sidechain, I could just say send that to group 3. So that way you could have, so the effects channels look like they kind of go directly to the main outs, but you could, in essence, use a group channel very similar to an effects channel, and that gives you a little more flexibility with the routing. Okay. So I just see a question, Greg. Is there a way to use the Cubase the Cubase's importer with Nuendo? Let me just take a quick look. I think it's gonna, if you do it with Cubase. Let me just see if there's a workaround for that. So I'm not sure if it's just limited to Cubase, but any Cubase project could be done directly in Nuendo. But let me just. So it looks like it's just an extension. I have a feeling I could try it out later that the extension, if you installed it, in Nuendo, that it might work. But I would, before giving kind of more of a definitive answer, I would try it out myself. But if you want to, send me a message, I'd be happy to kind of play with it over the weekend. Okay, so we have a question. How do you achieve a clean mix with built-in plugins? So the built-in plugins, are really, beyond what we often think of as being more of a batteries included solution with other programs. They're very high quality, so you don't really have to do anything super special with that. Give me just a second. So nothing extraordinarily different that you have to do with built-in plugins. But, one of the things that I see a lot of people run into is where perhaps, people are using too many plugins. So that is something to try to avoid. But if you just kind of, you could definitely do kind of clean mixes with built-in plugins. We have lots of people do it, every day, all the time. So just get this project open. Sorry about that. Just give you an idea. I'll just play this project back. And these are all just kind of built-in plugins. But if you kind of go, with any plugin, if you send too much, to the reverb, and if you're pushing everything. But, just kind of basic gain structure. There's, you could definitely do, incredible sounding mixes with all the built-in tools. And, I've seen lots of people who, they're like, they may use one or two plugins outside of Cubase, and a lot of people that are migrating to just using the built-in Cubase plugins. They find it sound great, and that they also just have the capability for, as working, that you don't have to worry about, different compatibilities with operating system updates. So when they're kind of working, so. Okay, let me just, all right, so my timeline, my chat field jumped. So let me just jump back to a. Okay, let me just jump back and see. Okay, all right, so we see Rudy asking how everyone's doing. All right, so we have a question. Why is it when I go to audio warp a track and I open it up in the inspector, it closes after I selected one musical mode? It closes after I selected the musical mode and my track moves. Okay, so let's say I go to, I'll just kind of take a drum loop here. All right, just find quick kind of percussion. Okay, so I'll just destroy the songs that say, so when I go to audio warp a track and I open it up in the inspector, okay, so let's say I double click here, I go to audio warp, place it into musical mode. So saying it closes after I selected the musical mode and my track moves. Check just out of curiosity that, like, when you go into the pool, so let's say this is going to be the name of the file is comprehensive beat. When you go into the pool window, so let's say if we're here, check to make sure that this tempo stamp is correct. So let's say if I put this tempo at 12 beats a minute, that, all right, so we're at 20 beats a minute. So now when I have that file in And I go to my audio warp. You know, I've seen that sometimes if the original tempo is kind of not set correctly. So check in your media bay and see, or in your pool window, if the actual files seem to have the right tempo stamp. And I've seen that kind of throw off situations like you're describing. So that's something I would check out, and that could cause it to cause your track to move. Okay. So we see Mark Rabin saying, hi, I hope all Cubasers are well and safe. Thanks, Greg. All right. Thanks for your kind wishes. All right. You see a nice comment from Ace Amadeus. Thank you, Greg, for your answers and sharing your Cubase wisdom. Glad to help. Okay, so a question, routing contact multis to separate tracks in Cubase. So when I don't have an instance of Contact installed on my system, I'll just do a new project, and I think I can show you in Halion, and it'll be kind of very similar to what you could do. So let's say I open up an instrument track, and we could do it with Halion or even Halion Sonic SE. But as we do this, so I could see my instrument track in my VSTi rack, and you'll see this little icon just to the right of the name. Click there, and then you could activate multiple outputs. And now when we go into our mix console, we can see all of our outputs. And from the project window where you see them is just when you have the instrument track that has multi-outs, you could just kind of click right there, and then you could see all the different outputs. So if you wanted to select an output here and be able to run it through, different EQs or different processors, but just from the instrument rack, when you have that installed, just go to activate outputs, and then you should see all the available outputs for that particular instrument. And I think it will work the same way with Contact as well. Okay, so Melodyne ARA, just started using it. Any obvious tips? So it's really, pretty straightforward. I don't have an instance of Melodyne on this particular computer, but, using it like an ARA function is just kind of selecting it here. So Melodyne originally kind of started off as a plugin, but now you could do stuff like, okay, I just wanted to go to your audio menu to extensions, and then you could just open up and this would be the same concept that we see with spectral layers. And at that point, it's just going to open up directly kind of in the lower zone editor, and then you could do your processing there. Once you want to commit to sounds, just go to audio and choose bounce selection. And at that point, those sounds will be embedded directly. All the edits can be embedded directly in the file. Okay. Okay, so I see Dr. Patricio's question here. Just to clarify my question from earlier, the difference in the internal clock is speed. So how do I match audio from two recordings with different speeds because of internal clocks? Okay, thanks for the clarification. So we can show you how to do this. Okay, so let's say I want to start off. I think I have like a jazz piece we could do this with. So let's say I have my files here, and I have no real correlation with the click track and this file. So I'll just So what you could do is take both files. You could select them, go to your project menu, and go to tempo detection. Okay, at this point, I'll just say analyze. Okay, now it's created a tempo map. And then you have some different settings. So if it's going to be like an offbeat correction. So you want to do that for both files. So I'm going to close this window. And now let's say I wanted to have we'll do like a horrific remix here, completely inappropriate. Okay, so now what you do is if we have this file, I'll just kind of drag it to our project window. All right, so the trick is to take two different files and, if you have to do that same principle, and if the files are, you may have to do it in different times. And I do have a video that covers this on the YouTube channel. I don't think I have the project file in this computer, but so let's say I have this particular file, and so we know what the tempo is of this file. Now to embed these tempo changes into the particular file so that I see all this information, you could do this for both files and go to Audio to Advanced and choose, we're going to say Set Definition from Tempo. And as we do this, we'll say Set Definition from in Project Only. And what that's going to do is basically embed the tempo changes of any file here. So it's and we could, once we have a track, and that will place it into musical mode. So I'm going to just place this particular file here. Let's say I have a tempo of, we'll start off here at, I'll just put it on the grid here. So what I want to do is to place this track into musical mode. So now when I play back, and now that I've done that with kind of our audio event, I can take this audio file and I'll just kind of drag it over, and it's going to just play back kind of like a perfect, a perfect metronome here. So let's just kind of get the downbeat in the right area. So I think we have some pickup notes. So we'll say we want that downbeat to be directly on the grid. So now I have my tempo set here. And you could just have those two kind of automatically align with each other. So let's just come here. I'll just put this right on the downbeat, and I'll move this tempo event directly to the downbeat. And let's move this file. And now we could just have these two because they're both in musical mode now. The jazz track is following the tempo of the drum loop. Now, if I want the drum loop to follow the original tempo of the jazz piece, all I had to do is just take this file, and once it's in musical mode, it's really just making it, follow, so I'm going to find my downbeat of the piece, and we'll define that. So we'll put this into 4/4 time. So now, and let's move this to the downbeat, and I'll just have this snap to the bar. So as we do this, so now I could have this audio follow the tempo of the jazz piece, or the jazz piece follow the tempo. So for each one, if it has varying tempos, just simply put that, do the tempo detection, and then do the offline, do the audio to advanced to set definition for tempo. If you know what the tempo is of each of them, just place it into musical mode, and then whatever the tempo is in the project, both files will automatically follow the project tempo. Okay, so question, is there a way to change the key and tempo of loops? Example, something might be one key, and then I want to change it to a key that my song is in. So when you kind of, import different loops, so say I wanted to do, different loops of, let's say, maybe a keyboard loop, and I'll just go back to maybe a different library here. So say I want a keyboard loop. So as I just kind of drag that loop in, and so this will automatically follow the tempo. And if you wanted to just transpose, you could just select and say this one you could set the root key if you wanted to. So you could say F sharp, and then you could just have it transpose. So now we could have this one go down a whole step. And when it gets to here, you'll hear it go up a whole step. So those are some of the things that you could do to make that happen. All right, so we have a question. Is there a way to change the sorry. Question, do you know how to assign a sample to 16 levels in velocity like an MPC 2000 XL in Groove Agent? So let me just open up a project really quickly. Okay, so I think I have like 8 different ones. I have 16 velocities, but I think we'll get sense. So, okay, so let's say I have like a number of snare hits directly here. So from soft to loud, say different velocity levels. Okay, so I want to open up a new instance of Groove Agent. So, and then I'm going to select the instrument pads. I could select all 8 of these samples and just drag it directly onto a pad. And as we've done this, we just dragged it all onto a pad as we play. And you could have up to, so as we're switching, you could put the mode directly into velocity, or you could layer it. That will play all 16 samples simultaneously. You could do a round robin, so every time you click in the same spot, it's going to play back a different, different sample for you automatically. So, but if you just wanted to layer by velocity, take your 16 samples, drop them onto a pad, set the mode here to velocity, and then as you just kind of click, and you can see it kind of indicated which samples are being triggered. That's all you had to do. Okay, so just see comment, mapping in Halligan 6 is working. There's no mapping in Halligan SE. So that's correct. So if you wanted to, do mapping and be a little more flexible, you think of Halligan Sonic SE is more kind of the player. And if you wanted to really tweak sounds, you could get that in the full version of Halligan. So it can be a little intimidating for a lot of people, but with flexibility comes complexity and sometimes intimidation for technology, but it's a great tool. Okay, Greg, what directory are the Media Bay files in Windows? So there's going to be, if you go to your start menu here in the lower left-hand corner, and then go to Cubase to, if you're looking for to move the Media Bay database. So you come over here and go to your Cubase program group in Windows, and I'm on Mac, so I can't really show it, unfortunately. But where you see the Cubase program group, you'll click there, the little folder. You'll see Cubase where you can start the program, and then you'll see Cubase application data folder. And within there, you'll have a mediabay.db file, I think. And that's kind of all the references to the files in MediaBay. But if you're asking within MediaBay, how to find all the files on Windows, if you just open up MediaBay, and you could see the left-hand zone, which if you go to the upper right-hand zone, you could enable and disable different window controls. And at this point, you could just say, I want to go to my factory content, or just to this computer, to documents, to downloads, wherever. And then you could activate various folders that you want for MediaBay to access. All right, so just seeing JVI, hi regular, awesome you here again, awesome these hangouts. Can we get a thumbs up from everyone? So I'll disagree, or I won't disagree. So please hit a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. All right, so we see Michael Teams from Weatherford. Good to see you on the hangout, Michael. Okay. So I just see, can I automate pitch correction using reference wave file? So if you have, so it may not be automated. So I'm not sure if you're trying to take an audio file, and have that and let me just read it again. So can I automate pitch correction using a reference file? So you can pitch correct the files. I'll just kind of jump over here. So, it's not going to necessarily take into account a reference file, but if you wanted to go to, the very audio editor here, you can, do pitch correction on a vocal file as you're kind of working it here. So if you wanted to just but it's not going to be able to extract the pitch settings from one file and copy that to another one. So I don't know of a way of doing that. So, but if it's a different type of pitch correction, let me know if I'm misunderstanding. Yeah, so I see a comment from Gareth. He had a question from earlier. I think it's about the rendering with automation. So yeah, try just using the complete audio signal path, and I think that should do it for you. Okay, so just see a comment from Pablo. In the last Hangout, Greg showed a render in place option that I've overlooked for a long time back. In the end, always grateful to Mr. Undo. You don't have to call me Mr. Undo. Just Greg is fine. I'm not that old. But I'm glad that it helped you out, Pablo. Question: in Cubase 10.5, I imported profile from 10, but when I start a song from created 10, 9.5, etc., all my hardware settings, hence routing, are missing. Also, the hardware profiles are missing in 10.5. So I think maybe once you have, so I'm just going to read again. So I started a song, created in 10, 10, 9.5, etc. All my hardware settings and hence routing are missing. Also, the hardware profiles are missing in 10.5. Probably if you still have your 10 and 9.5 and come directly to your audio connections, and if a lot of times you may have this set, but try going to your settings here, like especially your inputs, outputs, and control room, and try just saving a preset. And there's a chance that once you save the preset in an earlier version, that may just automatically, the preferences will probably catch it when you go to 10.5. So I would try that and see if that kind of helps you out. Okay, so it's just see from Vincenzo. Thanks, Greg, but the same MIDI parts are not obtained when importing third-party MIDI loops, always in the MIDI player module in Halion. Okay, so let me just take a quick look. I don't work extensively with the MIDI player module, but I'll look at it. All right, so we should have. All right, so maybe Vincenzo so it says the same MIDI parts are not obtained when importing third-party MIDI loops, always in the MIDI player module. So I'm not sure if you're trying to import third-party MIDI loops for this. So I'm not sure if the MIDI loops that you're importing are directly designed for Halion. If you could give me that information, that would be helpful. And if you want to email me also, at clubcubase at steinberg.de, I could do some more research on that particular subject as well. Okay. Okay, so I just see hello, please, in the audio connections section no longer have the click column. It is gone. Used 10.5. So let's go over, take a look at our audio connections. So let me just check. So remember there kind of being a click column, but if you, a lot of times, I think maybe it was moved. Let me just check somewhere. So if you go to the metronome setup, it might have moved into here. So let's say if you go to, so let's say you activate, so the audio click outputs. So go to transport to metronome setup. And then here you see the audio click outputs. And then you could choose your different outputs that are set up here. And you can see that these choices mimic these directly here. So instead of being routed in the audio connections here, instead go to transport to metronome setup, audio click outputs, and then you could route it there. So I think that should help you. If not, just let me know. Okay. All right, reading through comments. All right, so I see Gareth is anxiously waiting to rip off my compositions. So, all right, so did you see note expression, revelation of the day? You win again, Greg. So I'm glad now my hangout is complete. Always had to have a good something new for Gareth. Makes me feel like I did my job. Okay. So I see. Sorry, Greg. Let's say that I want to import audio stems into Cubase, but some of them are audio files with nothing in them. Blank audio event. So is that a way? Is there a way to delete those tracks? A macro. So sometimes even if there's not if there's not, the audio file of nothing is the same length and size as an audio file of actual content. So it could be difficult to say, find all the files that are empty and don't have anything. You could, and I'm not sure if this is, one thing that I see some people do is, let's see, I'll look in a Project Logical editor for something. But I don't think. Yeah, so I don't know a way to do that other than, if you have something like that, is just to maybe go to, if you go to audio to advanced and try the detect silence. And what that'll do is just kind of, you could adjust kind of your threshold here to not include stuff, but but I don't know of a way to automatically find audio files that, have data, but, it's like the amplitude is incredibly low and be able to select based on that as a criteria. But you might be able to experiment with the detect silence. But I'll kind of, keep that in mind over the weekend. See if sometimes I'll do a hangout and then it's like, oh, I could do this as a macro or a workaround. It'll just kind of pop in my head. Okay. All right. So okay, so just reading. All right, so Gareth's daughter is on a hangout visiting us. So it probably means that Gareth has to make her pizza now. So welcome, Gareth's daughter. Okay, in 10.5, lost all my transport settings from 10.5, from 10 to 10.5. What am I missing? Need to import. I posted earlier about all the hardware saves not being loaded and pre-missing. Already imported profile. So, if you do this, you could actually, let's see, I think if you go to the setup, so, again, try in your version 10 to save a preset and then, see if that preset, a lot of times if preferences aren't caught between versions, and this could be similar to, what we discussed earlier, but, if you have a kind of a custom preset here, try coming over here and saving the preset in 10. And a lot of times that preference will automatically kind of be carried over to 10.5. But you could, try saving a preset and see if that kind of carries forward. A lot of times it does. Okay. Okay, so we have a question. If there is time, would love to see a demo on how to work effectively with cycle markers. All right, so let me just come over here, see if I have a project where we could do some fun cycle marker stuff. Okay, so let's say I'm playing along here. So we can add a marker track. So there's two different types of markers. There's a marker that indicates a very specific point in time. Like there's a mistake here, go back and listen to it. And then there's also markers that are kind of based on cycles where we could define a range. So let's say if I was doing something like this was a live concert recording and I just have, audio files are 2 hours long. I could grab my range selection tool and then just click on the little add cycle markers. And that will, so when I do this, and this is when that preference I disabled earlier, where we could say under editing that the cycle, I'm going to choose cycle follows range selection. So when I select a range here, I can say, now I'm going to add a cycle marker because the left and right locators will be placed and synchronized directly with the range I'm using with the range tool. So I'll just come here and we could add multiple cycle markers like so. So now I've added all these cycle markers, and if you want to colorize them differently than so I'm just going to hold down Control. So if you want your cycle markers, I think you could even independently colorize them. So you want those to be yellow. And I wanted my other markers here. Let's say to be red. Let's see, I think I can assign these to different colors. Okay, so now when we do this, so we can have our cycle markers. Now, one of the cool things with cycle markers, if I'm exporting, so let's say this is a live concert and this is song 1, a bunch of gibberish, song 2, and this was kind of the start and end of the songs. When you go to our export audio mixdown, I could just choose to do like a single file, and I'm going to create a new audio track, but we have cycle markers here. We could name the cycle markers. So let's say if I just go to my cycle markers here, all right, and so we could open up your marker view, and let's say, I just want to select my cycle markers, and we'll just kind of type in our marker names. So, and we can see the markers because it has the brackets around. All right. I'm a great librettist here. Okay, so let's say now. All right, so those are my cycle marker names. We go to our export audio. So I see all my cycle marker names. So we could choose to, I want to have all of those, but there's also this little settings cogwheel by the name. And at this point, we could choose to say, I want the cycle marker name. So double click there. And now I'm going to import these files into the same project. So I say our multi-track. And I could do this with a batch export as well. So I'm going to do export audio mixdown. In just a second, we're going to see each of the files exported as a mixdown within the same project as independent files on different tracks with the same time position. And now that we look, we can see each of the files, the file names carry over the name of the cycle marker for you. So it's a quick run through some of the capabilities of cycle markers. So I hope that helps, Derek. Okay, my timeline jumped on me. Just bear with me for a second. Okay, Okay, so I see. Hi, Greg. Question: how can I automatically relocate an audio file to the original recorded place from the pool? Okay, so let me just take a quick look. Let's say I have all of these files, and I've moved their time. Let me just keep them all in the same track lanes here. So I will go to my pool window. So let's say these are gibberish files. And I'll just say insert into project at origin. And then I'll put them on one track or different tracks. So I'll say one track. And now when we look at them all, so that's, so there's our, all of the files input at their origin time. So once again, from the pool window to insert files, just go to your media, to open pool window, select the files, and then at that point, insert into project at origin. Okay, just okay, so I see Agent K, or maybe Agent K, can you tell me how to rewind? Otherwise, tomorrow you'll have a detailed index in the comments of this Hangout. Okay, so not sure if that's for me. Okay. Okay, so see, just comment, thanks for the comping tool explanation, Greg. All right. Okay, so I just see Greg question: why doesn't Greg choose the high precision audio path? So usually I don't use this for my personal project, so I may have just switched it at some point in a demo and didn't switch it back. So no real reason, or just last time someone asked how to go back, I probably just left it at 32-bit floating point precision. Okay, hello, Greg. If I have a plugin that causes Cubase to crash when I used it, can it still cause my Cubase to crash after reboot if I don't use it, or should I remove it completely? You know, if the program isn't, you know, it's pretty rare that a plugin will cause a crash if it's not being used. I think it could happen. I would say that it's pretty rare that would be the case. So I don't think, you know, if you don't use it, that it's not going to be causing the crash. So, but, you know, if you find that it's still unstable, you could try to remove it and see if there's any kind of lingering associated files. So, and see if that it makes a difference. But generally, if it's not, you know, generally if it's not being used, it's less likely. I'm not saying I'm not a developer or I really understand all that stuff. You know, I'm not that smart. So, but I think it's pretty unlikely that it would be to cause issues. So I see a question from Gareth. When you said Sam Ash, Greg, did you mean the music stores? Yeah, I've done for the last every other week for the last. Just did our third session this week. Just my 12 hours of live streams this week for various things. But we did we're doing a series of Cubase and Steinberg kind of product demonstrations with Sam Ash. You could probably find it on their Facebook or their YouTube page. And I think, you know, like this past Wednesday, like we did one on Cubase for kind of EDM and hip hop. Cubase for bands was the second one. We did an hour yesterday or on Wednesday on Cubase for, Cubase techniques for composers using Cubase. And I think the next one we're going to do like a week from, or 2 weeks from this past Wednesday, that we're going to be doing one on Wavelab. So, and you could watch those as well. And I think next time, we gave away a license at Cubase this last time. So, and there's not as many people watch those, so you have a good chance of winning free prizes. Okay, reading through different comments. As we see Pablo's going to dinner. He's going to be back in a while. I wish I could get a dinner break in the middle of a hangout. All right, so see how we're doing on time. So we're doing pretty well. Thanks for all the great questions. Okay, so we have a question from Ian Wood. Question: how can I set up my USB MIDI and audio interface at the same time? Example, UR22C for audio and a Yamaha MX61 for USB MIDI. So, once you have your two devices connected, so you connect those directly to your computer or to a hub. You'd go for the audio interface, you go to your studio setup, and here I have a UR24C, so I'm using that. So go to your VST audio system, and you would just select your audio interface there. Once you connect and install the drivers for your MX61, they would just show up automatically in Studio. If you go to more options to your MIDI device manager, and then you could have your MX61 set up here, but it's going to just show up as soon as it's the drivers connected. At this point, you could go, and you'll see it if you go to your studio setup to MIDI port setup. You should see all of your MIDI interface drivers there. Then really all you have to do is when you record MIDI, it will, so if we add like a MIDI track here, it will be routed into all MIDI inputs, and then you get to record MIDI through your MX61. And the audio, when you go to record an audio source, you'd say, okay, for my stereo in, it's going to be going in through my input 1 or 2 of my UR22C. So it's really just kind of connect both of them, and they'll both be available and not conflict with each other. Also, the UR22C has, I believe the MX61 just has a regular 5-pin DIN MIDI cable, but the UR22C, if you wanted to simplify it even further, has a built-in MIDI interface, and you could just connect the MIDI out of your Yamaha directly to the UR22C. But probably I'm not sure if the MX61 is bus powered. I'd probably be inclined to think that it's not. But if it is, you could do bus power or do USB MIDI or just, connect it to your UR22C. But just kind of connect both of them, and they're not going to conflict with each other. Okay, so I see question. When I click on home function in loops, then click, as an example, analog techno, the next look is empty and doesn't show or load. So let's take a quick look. So I'm going to go to loops, and let's say I click home. So let's say you go there and you go to loops, and so analog techno. So sometimes when you do this, realize that you may have just a variable setup. So you could have these different functions here. So, I got kind of a classic call from someone who couldn't find any sounds that they were looking for. And their condition was, it was literally like, a heavy metal accordion medium sound. And those were the criteria. Sorry for hitting my mic. And those were the criteria that were kind of set up, where maybe, when you do a search for accordion, and that's selected, that you don't really see any results, because in analog techno house, there's no accordion loops. So try, if you click just to the right here, you could just choose on reset attributes, and that will undo any particular, if you set up any search criteria, you could do that. And also when you click just like to the name, you could have it look for all material. Sometimes you may just say, okay, I'm looking for MIDI files that are in that folder. So you could also filter different types of, content, whether it's an audio file, a MIDI loop, a VST instrument preset, an effects chain preset. So different aspects like that. So make sure that, you have, try all media types, and try just clicking on the, the reset filters. And then I think you'll be able to kind of see all the content that's in that particular content library. Okay, so I see comment 3 very needed tips in a row. That's good. I don't know what they were because I'm so far behind, but I'm glad it's been helpful. So question, I was wondering why I can hear my JBL Bluetooth speakers when I play Sirius XM on my Messenger, or my Messenger on my iPad Air 3, but when I open Cubase, it doesn't. I've tried to change the outputs in the settings. So I don't have my iPad handy. So, but I could see if I could figure out a way to maybe get to the to see if I get it to output to some Bluetooth speakers I have. So, okay. So, but I could check to see if there's anything. Sometimes, the added latency, like when you're playing back like a Sirius or, or let's say, Sirius XM or other sound files, the latency may not matter as much, but sometimes if you're mixing with the latency of Bluetooth, it could be a bit off. So, and you don't notice it really much so much as at Sirius or other apps. Okay, so I just see from JVI regarding earlier question with hardware presets, saved them all a long time ago in earlier versions, but still not available in 10.5. If you want to email me your preset file or your profile file, or send me like a download link, I think it's depending on the size of the smile, but if you want to email it to me, Jay, I could see if it opens up directly into my, if you want to send a profile, I could see if I could open it up in my end and see what it looks like. But I'd be more than happy to kind of take a look at it. Okay, so we see Gareth or his daughter saying a big shout to MT. All right. Okay, so, and this is from Vincenzo. Says, Greg, sorry, the problem is about the MIDI loops. Importing my MIDI loops, not Hallian's ones, into MIDI player module after recording more notes with Cubase. I get only fixed notes and not the whole parts. So I'm not sure if the MIDI player is really for, I'll do some more research on it, Vincenzo, if you want to, and we could discuss it more in the Hangout next week. But if you want to email me just as a reminder, that'd be helpful. So I see a question from JVI. Did I get the 4-knob Hallian piano? So I haven't gotten a license for it, so I'm hoping to have one soon. So, okay, my chat line just jumped. So I see a question, how do you find out when these will be held? If you subscribe to the channel, you'll get notifications. So we've been doing Tuesdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern. Next week, just for the benefit of people, I may have the next 2 weeks I have a lot of other work assignments, so I may have to push the Hangouts. I may be able to only do one, and maybe on Saturday of next week. So just a heads up with that for those that are watching. But we'll make an announcement pretty soon. So. Okay, so I see a question. Why I do not have ASIO driver and menu. I literally don't have any sound coming out of Cubase anymore in VST audio system. It just says no driver. So if that happens, so generally anything that's, seen by the computer's operating system, when you go to your studio setup, you could come over here and see that. So make sure, one, that your audio interface is actually being seen by the computer's operating system. When you connected, disconnected, look into your control panel and see if you see that particular interface or driver. But, if it's not being recognized by the computer, you may just have to, you may have to reinstall the driver. And if you could let us know also if it's like a built-in driver for like a laptop PC, or if it's an audio interface, that could be helpful information as well, Sax. Okay, so we see Gareth is moving on. Have a nice weekend. Okay, so seeing just a reminder about a VST system link video. So I'm in the middle of doing a whole series of new videos. So we'll try to get to that, but I have a long queue of videos I need to get done for work. Okay, so a question with the animation software I used to work with, there was a built-in Python scripting to allow for procedural development of your work. Excuse me. Is there a scripting language for Cubase? There really isn't a particular scripting language for Cubase. And, a lot of times that happens when, tools will have scripting languages when they don't have the necessary functionality. But there really isn't any dedicated scripting languages that integrate with Cubase like that. Okay, so hi Greg, how can I organize my tools if I wish them all to be activated? So you probably don't want all of your tools activated at once. So if it's like the tools from the toolbar, excuse me, I'm just going to clear my throat. So if you have the tools from the toolbar, if you go to do a particular function and you say, okay, when I'm here, I do a particular function, and then I don't want it to be a scissors tool and an eraser at the same time, and a pencil and a mute tool. So if those are the tools that you want to do, but to switch back and forth, just hit 1 on your computer keyboard, 2, 3, and you see the tools changing 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you could just kind of scroll up and down using the numbers on your computer keyboard, and then you should be able to switch between the tools and have them active. Okay, so I just see a question. Agent K, when is the WaveLab Hangout? So, we're glad to answer WaveLab questions. We do it a lot on these Hangouts. Okay. Okay, so we have a question. I have 32-bit float chosen instead of 64-bit. Could that interfere with my 24-bit sound card? No, it won't interfere with that. So we can think of your 24-bit is going to capture that amount of information when you record audio. And then when you start to add other processing and incorporating like effects and EQs and automation, and you incorporate that extra information with your 24-bit audio, that's when you want the 32-bit float. So it just allows you to capture 24-bit, maintain that resolution, and still have the the actual data there. So you have the 32-bit going on as well. So you have 32-bit float with your 24-bit, 64-bit floating point with a 24-bit interface. So you see, might there be a solution to use control room with the AXR4? You could use the control room with the AXR4. It's just you can't really, unfortunately, access the DSP. So the hardware and the drivers are kind of done by our Yamaha colleagues. So we've brought it to their attention. I think they're perhaps working on a solution so that you could still access all the internal DSP and use the control room. I know it's frustrating, so it frustrates me as well. So I completely understand. Okay, from John Costigan. Hi, Greg. Is there a way for my old Alesis QS 6.1 to be seen as a MIDI device as it's not in the list of current MIDI devices? Thank you. You could see it and use it as a MIDI interface as long as you have connected, you could use it as a controller for that. And a lot of times you could still kind of search for device maps for different instruments. So if we come over here, let's say we go to our MIDI device manager. So we'll go to Studio, to more options, to the MIDI device manager. And so we come over here. Some Alesis stuff. So there's nanosynth. Yeah, so if it's not there, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. There's a website, and it's actually John, a guy based in Wisconsin. So if you go to, I think it's rivetedstudios.com. If you just say Cubase patch scripts and go to and search for Riveted, Riveted studios.com, I believe. That's a composer. I think he lives between Madison and Milwaukee. So he's not too far from you, John. And he, creates a lot of different he creates a lot of different, patch scripts, and, he's just like really into all that stuff. So definitely check out Riveted Studios if you don't see it, but you could definitely use it as a controller. So. All right. All right, so I have a question. Is it possible to render in place MIDI tracks connected to external instrument tracks? It won't necessarily do MIDI tracks to external instruments, to external. If it's being sent to an external instrument, no, but if it's defined, because we kind of need to know where the audio is coming in. But in the audio connections, if it's set to external instruments, so say, okay, I have my Yamaha montage, I go to add an instrument track, and I want to use this based upon my settings here. So I go to my montage, I hit add track. Now when I have, my MIDI composition here, and I go to edit to render in place, at that point, it will do a render in place if it's defined as an external instrument. But it needs to do it in real time, obviously, so that the audio is going to be, or the MIDI information is sent to the device. The audio outputs to that device are defined in the external instruments as audio inputs into Cubase, and then you just do a render in place, and you're kind of good to go with that. Okay. So you see at Cubase, can I stop Cubase asking me to change my audio device on startup? If I've disconnected an HDMI monitor since the last time, I think that's going to be kind of a call from the operating system. Like on, I see it on my Mac when I have different stuff connected and disconnected. So I think it might be an OS level thing, but I'll see if I can communicate with some of the team and see if there's a workaround for that as well. And just seeing Jazz Dude recommending deactivate the HDMI audio drivers in Windows. That's a great suggestion as well. So you just see question. Hi, Greg. Do you have any more to the point videos? I can't watch the Hangout every time because of my work schedule. So there are a lot if you go to on the Cubase YouTube channel. So if you go to Q&A series with Greg Undos, I think there's like 8 different playlists of different videos there. So you could definitely use those, but the indexes are also the Hangouts rather are also indexed, so that as you work, so if you go to the first topic in the discussion, there's Hangouts there. But also Jan, who I think is on a Hangout, did a whole website where he kind of took the indexes and made them searchable. So I think it's called cubaseindex.com. So you could take a look there and just kind of type in the term and say, I want to see this. And then you could find the different Hangout topics that kind of are broken down by subject that you could search. Okay. Okay, so I'm just seeing a question. Any word on the Superior Drummer 3 VST fix? So I'm not sure what the issue is, but if it's something that Superior Drummer has to do, I may not be privy to that information. But Bob or Rob, if you could let me know what the issue is. But it seems like we have lots of people who are running Superior Drummer. Okay. I believe it was in WaveLab, if I'm not mistaken. There's a beautiful digital spectroscope. Does Cubase 10.5 have one? The one in WaveLab is indeed beautiful. So I'll just reverts this, but there is one that you could kind of pull up inside of Cubase as well. It's not as pretty as Wavelab, but it'll kind of get you there it'll make you just a little bit happy, I think. So let's say we're playing, if we go to, let's say, our control room, I will go to I'll choose my monitors and go to inserts here. So I'll just do this in control room. And I think if we go under tools and go to multi-scope, and then at this point, so if you want to see kind of like a phase scope, so you could definitely kind of use that. But maybe in the future it'll have some connection or something between Wavelab for the metering. So. Okay. Hi, Greg. Hope you're doing fine. Is there a way to change the two background colors in Very Audio edit window? I want to see the sharp notes and the black lines and the others on the white lines. Yeah. So if you want to do that, I'll just take this bass part and we'll go to Very Audio. So I understand why you'd probably want that. A lot of times I just go to the preferences, and if you go to user interface and color schemes, then you could say project, we'll go to editor area background. So when you come here, just move this line straight up. So you just take the vertical and then hit OK. And then you could see kind of the dark lines, the black keys being darker than the white keys. So you could just change that if you wanted to. So otherwise you could just kind of jump back. And that same preference will also work in the MIDI window as well. So if and in the sample editor, so now if so we'll go to the same preference. And again, the editor area background. And hit OK. And then you could see the piano roll editor just kind of change accordingly. So. Okay, hi Greg. How to split a Yamaha accompaniment style into different tracks in Cubase. So if it's been, excuse me, if it's been recorded and all of the tracks come in as one track, but multiple MIDI channels, which is I think sometimes how the Arranger workstations go. You could go to your MIDI. First, put it on, you'll see a MIDI channel, put it on MIDI channel any. Go to your MIDI menu to dissolve part, and then you could choose to, you'll see if there's multiple MIDI channels there, you'll see something that says separate channels. So try selecting, I just have one single MIDI channel information here, but try selecting a part and choosing separate channels and hit OK. And that will automatically kind of split the different information out for you. So once again, go to put on MIDI channel any. If it's multiple MIDI channels on one part, go to your MIDI to dissolve part, choose separate channels. Okay, so further clarification, the VST, this is, I guess, with Superior Drummer, crashes when trying to load. TuneTrack says it's a Cubase issue, and Cubase says it's a TuneTrack. Just wondering if you had heard of it, if there was a fix. I don't think it's widespread. So, I on my main studio computer, I have Superior Drummer as well, and I've loaded it without any issues. Depending on, I think Superior Drummer kind of loads everything into RAM. So I don't know if it's streaming so much, like if it's playing back all the samples, like if you set the amount. So I think earlier versions, I haven't followed it because I'm more of a Groove Agent guy. But as you do that, see if there's a way to maybe not load it into, if there's an adjustment, like in Groove Agent, if I have Groove Agent, just to kind of show you here, there's often like in options, like a disk preload amount so that you could load a certain amount into RAM and you could adjust that. So see if there's a way to set more of it to be streamed from disk. A lot of times if it's crashing, it could be that it's just kind of taking too much computer memory. Okay, so it's just C from Sub 403 that made him happy with the... So nice that it also has a stereo display. Was there a correlation meter? I'm not sure if there's correlation on it in the multi-scope. So there's kind of the scope, your frequencies. This might be a correlation here on the left-hand side. So we had the phase here. So I realize that plugins may be one of the older ones, but still useful. Okay, and just seeing more comments on the Superior Drummer. So other people indicating that it works fine for them and set the preload amount. It's configurable. All right. So, and also other people indicating that they're good with Superior Drummer. All right. So let me see. Okay. And I think we had one question, a follow-up question that was sent in advance, and I had sent this over email and I haven't had a chance. It's been kind of really swamped with work stuff to check out the files that were downloaded. But we just had a question last time about if ASIO changes the audio quality. So let's see if this is a file I was thinking of. All right, so I'm going to... Let me just see if I have this particular file. Okay, so I did a white noise test. And it's kind of a question came up that, if having ASIO on, which allows you to have, kind of run multiple stages of latency so that you could have the program run at, a higher latency, but the tracks that you're recording at a smaller latency, if that made a difference. The last time we showed kind of a 1K test tone, and we just nulled it out, and that kind of indicated to me that it wasn't an issue with ASIO-Guard that was changing the audio quality. And then we got a comment saying, or the person that kind of raised the point said, okay, maybe it's because there isn't a lot of frequencies going on. And that was a fair point. But so I took like this audio file, I just did a test tone generator. I'll turn the volume down because it'll be annoying. So this is, basically white noise. That's, let me just adjust my connections here quickly. So this is kind of all frequencies going on in the field. And then I just did an export with ASIO-Guard on and an export with ASIO-Guard off to see if there was a difference. So, and then place it. So we have the original file here. So this is the ASIO-Guard on. This is ASIO-Guard off. And I'll just turn this up a little bit so that you guys can hear. It seems like... Check my connections one more time. Okay. So if I solo both of these files, so I'm going to just open up the next file. So we have both of these files playing now. And it's kind of the full frequency spectrum. And then when I reverse the phase, they completely cancel out. So this would lead me to think that the sound quality isn't different when using ASIO-Guard or not. And just as a kind of an interesting test, if I wanted to go to the original file and just show you how kind of come here and flip the phase, that's going to cancel out with the original file, as well as, let's open up this file. So I have the first and third one playing, and that cancels out when you flip the phase. So I should have some time over the weekend. It's been a really kind of crazy week work-wise. So I'll see if I can get those downloads of the files that you sent. But that's I think a pretty fair test to indicate that perhaps that the ASIO-Guard isn't changing the audio quality, but we'll just check it out. We also had a question that was mailed in, how to get audio from Steinberg products sent over Zoom. So how to get that configured in a reasonable way. So there's a lot of people will use different stuff like voice meter. Some people will use, I think, Kakos. The people who do Reaper have a plugin maybe called Restream or something that some people use. And I do a lot of live streams, and one of the things that is come up in the system that I kind of set up initially to do all my live streams is I take my audio, like how I'm doing this stream, and when I do Zoom presentations is I'm taking the output of my Cubase to one audio interface, a UR24C, and that's going into an analog mixer that has a USB out. So it's a Yamaha MW12CX or something like that. And I take my microphone, and that's also going into that particular that mixer as well. So, and when I go to Zoom, I just set the inputs, the audio stream to go from the Yamaha mixer and not go through the audio interface of the interface I'm using for Cubase. So I have one audio interface for the live stream and one for Cubase. And that really kind of minimizes latency and makes everything, much easier to be set up with. All right, let's see. We didn't have a lot of questions sent in. Let's see if there's other questions that have come in. Okay. Okay, so just reading. Okay, so we have a question from Chad Fisher. Hi, Greg. I'm a brand new DAW user. Just installed Cubase last week. Congratulations and welcome to the Hangout. So sorry for really basic question. Any tips on VST folder organization so that instruments are grouped together under instruments? And any tips on tricks on moving VSTs when organizing? So thanks for asking your question, and there's no question that's too easy or simple. So if you go to your device, your studio menu, you'll see Plugin Manager. So you'll see all of your VST effects, all your VST instruments created here. You'll see this little plus sign. It's a bit demure. And we'll do this, and we could create a new collection. So we'll come over here, we'll give it a name. So we'll say this is for Chad Fisher. Hit OK. And now we could say, okay, I want these as my drum program. So I'm going to just drag it over here. So say, okay, let's do this. And I want backbone, and I like to get, sounds from this. So now if I wanted to put these into a folder, I could say new folder and call these drums. And I could place all of these tracks, all these plugins directly within that folder. So you could go through and organize your plugin presets exactly as you want and save it as a collection. And then you could just call it up directly here. So you say, okay, I know people do, I'm mixing, I'm mastering, I'm tracking, I'm programming. And then you could just simply come over here and call up those different plugin presets for you so that you could have access to the plugins in the order that you want to organize, just exactly how it makes sense to you. Okay, so I see question. Yeah, I seen the correlation on the left. Thank you, Greg, for dedicating your time and knowledge. Hope you have a great weekend. Thanks. Yeah, I've had just really busy work week, so I'm looking forward to a relaxing weekend. Okay. Okay, so we see Pablo needs to check out. Thanks for joining us. All right. Okay, so how can I set up a stereo pair of monitor speakers with my mono single outputs? A second pair. So really all you have to do if you wanted to have more than one set of speakers is go to your audio connections. And from the audio connections, you'll see, go to the control room tab. And like here, I have 3 different monitors set up. So I could say my HS7s are going out of my, mix left and right. And let's say I have, let's say some JBLs. So I'll come here. And now I want my JBLs to go out of outputs 3 and 4 or whatever. So in my control room, when I'm here, you could actually just say, okay, I want to go to speaker. I want to go from my Yamahas to my JBLs to whatever, and you could just change your speakers directly here. So if you have the control room, you could just set up and switch between your different speakers without having to have a piece of hardware that colors your signal. Okay, just reading through comments. Okay, so we have a question from Elvis Quadros. Hi, Greg. What are the advantages of ARA2 or ARA support? Thanks. So when we get into particular functions and editing functions, you may run into a scenario where, it's going to be a bit more involved for communicating and transferring data from one tool to another tool that isn't really covered in a plugin. Sorry for the plosive. Isn't really covered in a plugin format. So if you have a plugin format, you could send audio to it, but if you're doing editing, that may not make as much sense. But what ARA2 allows you to do is to kind of send it into a different editing environment as opposed to just a plugin, and be able to kind of send the audio, edit the audio there, and have it go back to Cubase. So with this, if you have Melodyne, or I think Vocal Line works with it, but you would just go to your audio menu and at this point choose extensions, and I could just go to spectral layers. Now spectral layers will load up and I could do, my editing kind of directly in spectral layers, and, without having to export the file, go in, I could still hear it in time with my project, and then be able to do my edits here, bounce the selection, and go back. So instead of just being a plugin that's processing the audio, think of ARA as allowing you to process the audio through a different editing environment and still have it in sync during playback and be able to communicate those changes back and forth. Okay. All right, so I think I'm at the end of the chat field. So we'll see if there's any other questions that are coming up. So we'll see. And again, next week, I think I may try to do the Hangout on Saturday because I have kind of work commitments that I'm going to have to be doing. So I'll try to do the Hangout on Saturday. So look for like an announcement maybe Monday when I know for sure. So okay, so just see from one from my wish list. Please let us sort inputs, outputs, and the audio connections dialog. Okay, I can see where that could be useful, so I'll pass that on to the team. Okay, so we have Jerry from Northern Ireland. I can't get Contact Player 6 to work in Cubase Pro 10. I've tried uninstalling and reinstalling and changing the path. So, make sure, one, that, it could be, if your Contact, take a look at it and make sure that, one, it's a 64-bit version. So it could be, there could be a 32-bit and 64-bit version. So if you have that option, run the 64-bit version. So if you see the path, in Contact, unfortunately, still a VST2 instrument. So when we go to our VST plugin manager, you can see this so if you've gone through the path and you've seen it there, you should be able to define the path here. And when you hit that, to be able to see the particular plugins. I think it's going to be something pretty simple. So make sure that you're using the 64-bit version of that and if you have other plugins, maybe other NI plugins in that folder, see if those plugins are coming up. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead and see if there's any other questions. We'll hang out. If not, I could wrap up a little early. So we'll see, but I'll hang out just a little bit, see if there's further questions. Yeah. All right. So we'll see. I see also Jazz Dude, who's he hasn't. Indicating that on Windows 10 that the native instruments DLL file could be in an odd place. And it says hi keeps block listing it. So make sure when you look at it that is an actual, check to see that it is the 64-bit version and not the 32-bit, because the 32-bit version of the plugin will get block listed. Okay. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. When I create a track with a sample, duplicate the sample, and when I invert one of them, both get inverted. That's how kind of audio works. I'll show you how to get around that. So let's say I have just a quick audio file here. Let's do it. Let's do a new project here. All right, and just let me check my control room, see if I'm on the right. All right, so this should help if I'm sending it to the right. All right, so say I have this file, and I use the same file elsewhere in the project. So I'll make this really big and obvious. So I had the two files. So these are the same audio file. So when we place it in the project twice, a change, like an offline process change that we make here, since it is the same file, will be applied to other ones. So if I select this file, go to audio, and we reverse it, and this could be based upon a preference here as well. So let's go to editing, preferences, to editing, to audio. And when we see on processing shared clips, so by default, it may give you something like this. So you could just say, okay, so now I reverse this. So both of them have reversed now. Okay, so if I don't want that, so we'll undo that. So now they're all playing forward. Go to your preferences, and then you'll see on processing shared clips, you could just choose create new version. So we'll do this, and now when I I'll just do the same one for consistency's sake. I come over here, do audio to processes, reverse. Now this one is reversed. It created a new file, so that plays back reversed. And the next one will play back normal. So just go to, if you want to do that a lot, just go to your preferences, and on processing, you could just say create new version. On processing, share clips, under editing, audio. Okay. So hi, Greg, is there a key command for monitor the track button? So I believe there is. Let me just look it up just to make sure. So if you just go under, looks like under edit to monitor. So I just have it set up for Command Option Shift M. So I think I may have made that. So now you could just come here, and I'm just using that keyboard shortcut that I defined personally. So once again, go to edit, to your key commands, and under the edit section, you'll see monitor, and you could always type in monitor here. And then you could, just type in your key command here, hit assign, and then you could be all set with that. Okay, just reading through some comments. Okay, so we see Carlos Santos, I get 5 stars. Make sure you give a thumbs up if you learned something new. Okay, so we just see from Zozilla the Great. Thanks a lot, Greg. May I ask one simple question? Please do. So that's what we're doing here. So I see from okay, so just reading through a question. Hi, Greg. I noticed that after I exported an audio file and import it back and then compare it to the exported audio, it is a bit early. I'm talking less than ticks. I see when I zoom in almost all the way, my latency compensation settings are on detail as far as I know. So let's go ahead and take a look. So I think in that file with the we did the ASIO white noise. That's the one I just bounced yesterday. So let's see what it looks like. This may be not the best file to do this with, but I'll take a look. And I'll change the colors here to make it a little more obvious, perhaps. All right, and let's just kind of blow out the amplitude zoom of the waveform. All right, so you can see it a little better like this. So that looks pretty, just when I did my export test, that looks pretty dead on. So, if I move directly to where that amplitude is. That's kind of the same on both files there. So something to check, is if you have, try another test. Sometimes, some plugins can report their latency not correct. So I would, out of curiosity, check to see if, if you have any plugins on the master bus, like on your 2-track, see if you bypass those, if it makes a difference. But, those settings look the same to me. And let's see if there's anything else that might kind of cause that. Usually it's going to, I don't think a snap to zero crossing would have an impact on it. But if you have a picture that you could send as well, or a project you want to send me a link to, I'd be happy to kind of take a look at it for you. Okay, so we have a question. Can we play 2 clips on the same tracks on the same place without having it choose one or the other merge? Basically we can think of it, it's going to play each track will play one voice at a time. So, I could see if you needed to merge them, you could just take, 2 files and, just merge them. But, it's really, and I can see if it was 25 years ago where it's like, wow, 4 tracks of audio on my computers, who'd ever thought, I could do vocals, but, it's not, it's very easy to have so many tracks of audio. So I'm not sure if there's a particular benefit with why you want to merge them. So but if there's a particular reason that you want to merge, but there's, basically we'd want to have each channel have one voice play at a time, because then it's hard to edit or mix, 2 different sound sources with one fader if you're trying to mix it. Okay. All right. So we've got 4 thumbs up from Keith Young. Thank you. All right. Okay, so we have a question from Baserocious. I like your name. That's a great one. How do I set up interface to record audio in a track, i.e. bass, and listen back to it while playing along with playback on the same channel? Okay, so you want to record audio in a track, bass, and listen back to it while playing along. So if you want to hear one of the things that you could do. So let's say if we have a track here is, a default record mode that works really well is when we go to, if you go to preferences and under VST I like to choose for the auto monitoring style, tape machine style. So when I come, let's say I have audio going on and have this track record enabled. So I will just go ahead and just record. So say I doing my first bass pass. Everything is cool. It's like, okay, laying down amazing bass line, and maybe I have to do like an overdub. So I'm going to come here and now I'm just going to hit IO. So what this is going to do is as I go to play, the record enable is disabled. When it punches in, the monitoring, or not the record enable, but the monitoring is disabled. So let me just start that over again. Sorry. So if I want to punch in, so as soon as I hit play, the monitoring is going to be off. So I hear the pre-existing recording, and then when it goes to punch in, it'll cut out the monitoring for the original recording, so you hear what you're recording, and go back to the previous recording when the punch out occurs. So if we watch this time here, so I have my left and right locators, and I hit I and O for punch in and punch out, or click here on the transport. So now when I hit play, if you watch the monitor button, as soon as it gets to that point, the monitors are going to kick in and then kick out. So there's in. So we're hearing what's being recorded. When we punch out, we're hearing the previous take. So I think maybe, I'm not sure, but I think that might help with your interface question. So, so let me know if I misunderstood, but hopefully that will do the trick for you. Okay. Hi, Greg. Having issues importing MPEG and AVI files. What is the Cubase preferred format? So, with the video files, it's not necessarily the format is just one part of the equation, but it's also going to be the codec and the container. So, when you're working with this, if you go to, go to the Steinberg site, and I'll show you the webpage again here, but just so you can have it as a reference. Let me just see my live stream info here. So I'll just go to Steinberg or video support in Cubase, Nuendo, Dorico, Wavelab. And you'll see an article that'll probably just come up at the Steinberg Help Center. So for this, you could see, the different codecs, the containers that, are supported, the best ones. And, so really just kind of look, these are probably the best containers, like a .movie or MP4 or AVI. So you're going to have the container and a codec, and that combination is really critical. So just kind of use one of those, and that should, make your life working with the video files. And there's a lot of different utilities to convert that video file to, with one codec, input this and output it to another codec. So. Okay. Okay, so getting back to playing two channels on one. So it says I had a session with 3 tracks of kick, and I wanted to merge them. For example, since they were the same, the export from the guy was kind of funny. That's not terribly uncommon, like kind of famed hard rock and metal producer Michael Wagner. I've seen where he's had 12 kick mics and 15 snares, and probably because he can. But let's say if I jump to this project, so on this project I have, I think, 3 kicks as well. So I'm just going to hold down Alt and Shift and bring these all up. So, and that's perfectly fine to have them all on one. If you want to come here, you could assign those to a group fader. So say I want these to a group track. So now this one fader can, let me just do that in a different way. So I'm going to select these 3 tracks, and I'm going to add a group channel to the selected channels. So at this point, I could, and I'm tired and keep making mistakes, so I'll try this a 3rd time. So if you want like one fader to adjust, add a group channel to the selected. And now I could just move one fader. for all the groups, and I could just hide these particular channels if you want, so, but it's perfectly fine. You could also, and if you don't want to do that, once you have kind of the balance set between them, you could select those 3 channels. So just hold down the shift key, click in the meter region, and you could, just do a link. And you could say, okay, we're going to do a link group here, and we'll call this kick. And now when I move one, these 3 will all move together. You could bounce those down to different files if you want. So, if I come also to my edit menu to render in place, I could say, okay, let's do our render settings. I wanted to, keep the channel settings, and I wanted to mix these down to one file. And I could choose to mute the original sources. So if I just come over here, hit render, these 3 will be kind of summed together as you do that. But, you may want to have the flexibility of being able to, EQ, edit different sources. And if you do have these linked, you can just hold down the Alt or Option key, and then you could override the particular link just like that. So, and there's a good chance that they may be the same instrument, but different microphones of the same instrument. And if they are the same instrument, just, erase the other 2. All right. So a question, what is the easiest way to align a printed reamped bass with a DI bass print to avoid phase issues? Thanks. So a lot of times when doing that, if you have just, a simple phase switch, still works beautifully well for that. So let's say if I just have, these 2 tracks here, and let's say it's my bass. So if you just open up one of the channels and just, for like, for amp and, generally for amp and DI signals, just, a simple phase switch will do the trick. So you could just open up the channel, and then on the EQ section, you just have your phase switch right there. So do that. You could also, do audio alignment. So there's an alignment panel if it's like really constantly changing, and maybe different performances where you could load one as a reference track and load one as a target. But, for just a simple DI versus amp, just flipping the phase will take care of it 99% of the time. All right, so we see Jerry Balliman from Northern Ireland. Your videos are always very intuitive and very useful. Thanks. I just hope they're helpful for people. Okay. Okay, so we see Keith Young, just in case I thought my thumbs up were marks out of 10. He gave me 10 thumbs up. Thank you. That made my day. So I just see more from kind of on the layering the kick drums. Can't we just drag the clip in one track instead of layer one or another having all to play? One track is going to play back one sound. So, unless you have, and you it's probably more of a hassle to try to do that than just having the 3 tracks play. And if it's also like an editing scenario, one of the things you could do, is let's say, oh, I move this and the other ones, are now kind of out of time and I'm worried about that, is select the events here and just hit Control or Command plus G, and that will group it. So now whenever you do an edit to one, like in time, those will all be grouped together. Okay, so and I just see further comments from Zozilla. When I do that, it creates layers that I could play, but only one at a time. Links were exactly the same sound sources, but just different play. So if so, I would just I don't see any benefit to putting it all into one. And if you want other parts to be muted, just mute those parts. Okay, so it just says like a record scenario with multiple takes. Can't we just merge takes? If you want to. So let's say, I wanted to take these two parts and I'll just do a render in place. So let's say I'll just make these dry channels. So I'll say render. So it's going to take those two snare tracks there. And let me so I'll just do this again. So I'll take my two snare tracks. So if you want to merge them, but come over here, just go to edit to render in place. I'll do my render settings, and I'm going to choose my channel settings and mix down to one file, and this will merge both of those files together. And now, we just have, those files all merged. So you could just do edit to render in place. And when you have channel settings or higher here, or lower, depending how you look at it, that will give you an option to, merge the particular events. Okay, so we have a couple minutes left. Let's see. Okay, so when using Groove Agent SE, select the native drum setup and assign the outputs to each individual track. Is it possible to have the 3 toms in each individual track, or is this a limitation of the Groove Agent SE? So let's go ahead and take a quick look. So when I go here, let's say to my Groove Agent SE, so we could have, so there's 2 different modes of Groove Agent SE. You could have the beat agent. So let's say I have this going on. I'll make these tracks just a little bit louder. So let's say I have that. I'm just going to reread the question here. So select the native drum setup and assign the outputs to each individual track. So when I come here, I could select this. Right, now I'm just having brain cramp. All right, I'll show you on maybe just a acoustic agent kit as well. Let me add an acoustic agent. Okay, I'm sorry. You see this kit mix. So now I'm going to add output 2. So we see output 2. Now add it here. So I can say kick. And now I want this snare. I could send that to output 2. So I select that. I could send it to its outputs. So if I want, those to go to output 3, I could just come here, activate output 3 for each of these. I think I could do it all at once, but so now all my toms are going out of output 3. And if we want to do this for an acoustic agent kit, some of the acoustic agent kits might be a bit more fixed by design. So if I wanted to have my toms, these might be kind of all mapped. So we go to the mixer. So all the toms will kind of be summed here. But if I wanted to send my toms to output 2, go back to the instrument set. So now all the toms, and why we see it coming here is like the room mics, but the kick is out of the main, the snare, and now my toms are out of a separate, distinct output. So we see, can you do that with takes? Talking about the rendering, yes. So. Okay, so hi Jerry here again. How do you get your fader area in mix console to be different colors? So this is a feature that was added in Cubase 10.5. So if you go to preferences, to user interface, you'll see track and mix console channels. You'll see the mix console channels, activate that. So you see without colors, activate it, hit apply, and now you have beautiful colors. And that kind of goes throughout the mix console, throughout the entire signal path as well. So when you look at it, so that was in 10.5. Okay, so I just see from Sable, nice comment. Thank you, Greg. I learned something new and exciting with each live stream. Astonished by the endless possibilities of Cubase. I usually learn new things in every Hangout as well. And I guess the endless possibilities keep me employed all these years. So I'm grateful for that. So, all right, so I see Ace is looking for video convert software for Windows that doesn't have a lot of bloatware. So I know people that just get DaVinci Resolve, which is a freeware, just a freeware video editor that you can just load video in and export to different formats. All right, so we're nearing our time. So we're just about 3 hours and 57 minutes. Looks like we're kind of reached the end of all the questions. I want to thank everyone for the wonderful questions. I hope that everyone's learned something new. If people have learned something new, please feel free to hit the like button. Also, feel free to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that. We look forward to seeing everyone in the next Hangout. So it's probably going to be next Saturday would be my thinking, but I should definitely know more details on Monday. But so sorry, it'll maybe like this for 2 weeks, and then we'll be back to kind of our normal Tuesday and Friday schedule. So just big work projects that have to be done at particular times that are kind of conflicting with the Hangout. So with that, I'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you for Agent K for all his moderation, Jazz Dude for helping everyone out. So just seeing a last minute question. So if you have overlapping events, if you've recorded like a cycle of events, you could also just put them into like a comping tool. So just see if we can get this quickly before we run out of time. So if you have tracks that are recorded, you could put them into lanes also is something that you could do. So, and when I open up the lanes in this particular track, these can be different takes. And if you only want to hear different parts of different ones, you could just grab the hand tool and do comping to select different takes on the same track. So I'm not sure if this kind of makes sense for your scenario, but that could be a way of doing that. And if you wanted to take these lanes and turn them into audio, you could just select the lanes and create tracks from lanes as well. So, all right. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. And thanks everyone for a wonderful hangout, and we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend, and hope everyone gets some rest and is able to stay safe and healthy. All right, take care.